So good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here for the webinar. I'm sure this is one of the hot topic, or one of the area of concern for many organizations. We are into the management consulting side, so we generally talk to customers on these subjects. They share their concerns, they share their thoughts. They're really looking out for the solutions for this, the way to execute things, way to execute their strategies, right? So this is the whole context of today's webinar, and definitely we expect a lot of participations. We expect people to come forward and share their thoughts. We have invited, and because this is not a challenge or a concern faced by a particular region, particular country, particular area, right? It's across the globe. We all are going through this situations. We all are facing. We all are at home. Now that's a common thing between all of us. We are at home, right? Keeping these aspects in mind, we have invited leaders from Middle East. We have invited leaders from Asia Pacific. We have invited leaders from Europe. We have people from US, right? And these are the guys who have mentored, guided many companies during their careers. And we are here to listen to them and then see how we are going to address some of these challenges, right? So let me introduce the speakers today. We are quite glad to have these guys on today's webinar. So I'll start with Hannes. Hannes comes with a couple of decades experience. He is the founder of How to OKR. He's been mentoring a lot of companies, in Europe and rest of the regions, and that he brings a very rich experience in managing or supporting different verticals, be it automobile to banking to startups to fintech, right? So thank you so much, Hannes, for joining.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
We have Erno and we have André, and Erno and André, they are the founders and co-founders of Digital Winners. Erno brings more than a couple of decades experience. He's basically known for digital transformation. He has supported many organizations. He is like a series of entrepreneurs. And Erno and André work together, and they are like supporting many organizations in Europe. Their experience would be quite crucial for today's webinar. So thank you so much, Erno and André, for joining the webinar.
Thank you for the invitation.
We have Ayman, and Ayman definitely, he brings in close to 4 decades of experience, and then needless to say, right, I mean, one of the aspects that we're trying to cover, Ayman has seen many situations, right, many ups and downs during his career, we are quite excited, for him to be part of this. Ayman basically, leads Aspire HR Consultants. He is one of the founder of Aspire HR Consultants. He's based out of Egypt. We have Rajiv Banerji. Rajiv is like a strategist or management consultant. He's based out of Singapore. He again brings a couple of decades of experience. He has been at leadership role in Standard Chartered and IBM. We are like happy to have him for today's webinar. So thank you, Ayman and Raju, for being part of webinar.
Thank you, Madhu. Thank you, everybody. Just to explain, I'm just a partner in Aspire. The founder is Rania Abdullah. Thank you.
Thank you for the correction, Ayman. I definitely like to invite my co-host Karthik. Karthik heads Asia Pacific market. He also brings in more than a couple of decades experience. So I'm sure this experience would be quite exciting for every one of us. One of the reasons that we wanted to have this webinar is the agenda, right? That exclusively emphasizes more on the business aspects, right? There are a lot of risk. We anyway see a lot of adversity. People are really worried about managing the bigger aspect of their organization, which is workforce. People are operating from home. Some of the experiences, we may in fact have those experiences during this webinar, right? Wherein probably internet is playing a crucial role here, right? So managing workforce, right? Handling different aspects of business, communication, collaboration, executing strategies. There are many aspects, right? Anyway, we see the impact on the economy. We see the governments taking decisions. We see the demands, right? In the market, right? So we really want to discuss, and we really want to emphasize and seek experiences of the leaders who are on webinar today, right? So on this note, we'll start with the first questions, and that is something that we all are excited to be to hear from them. So the first question, or the first the agenda for today's webinar is to how to run your business effectively in current scenarios. And specifically, if you see here, we are not using a term called COVID-19 because we all go through different scenarios, right? I mean, today we are in this situation, but tomorrow we will be in different situations. And irrespective of the tough situations we are in, how are we going to handle this, right? And that's the whole context here. So on this note, I would like to invite Erno, to share his thoughts and experience. Mm-hmm. So Erno.
Actually, André wanted to start this point, but he is just he's not in the panel yet.
Yeah.
So can you switch him to the panel, please?
Yeah. So I'll then invite Hannes here, and if Hannes can share his experience and thoughts.
Sure, just let me kick it off. And as you said, I think it's not about delivering one size fits all solutions. I think everybody is in complete different situations. Personally, yeah.
Just 1 second. I just wanted to ensure that is everyone able to hear Hannes clearly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it's not about delivering one size fits all solutions. For me, it's most important that you guys can pick up some key takeaways which might be applicable for you. For me, this first challenge is about, or my advice is about counterattacking two main tendencies. A, in these situations, you tend to think and react very internally focused, and the other tendency is that people would like to shift into a very autocratic leadership style, and I would like to give you some hints to turn it around. I think it's still important to really to plan on site, to agree on a few short-term goals. So in other words, don't skip the OKR exercise. Try to formulate maybe just a few, maybe just 2 or maximum 3 OKRs for a relatively small period of time. If you work with quarters, stick to quarters, really keep on trying to formulate really outcome-based things. Don't be afraid to go for assumptions in those times with a lot of uncertainty. And I think it's very okay in these times to reverse decisions from situations where you missed out something, you did some mistakes. It's also okay to adjust your yearly OKRs. And the other big thing is that basically you try to build a kind of psychological safety for your employees. So show even more trust. Don't step into the trap to shift into this very autocratic leadership style. I think that's a very clear recommendation. We know from companies like Google and Facebook, they have basically paused completely performance reviews until end of the year. I think Facebook did it in a different way. They actually gave everybody per se a positive performance review right away. So just take away that psychological aspect from your employees. Try to let them work as free as possible based on the current situation, and try to also ask them actively for their collaboration and their ideas, because they see things very differently. If they know in which situation we are, which brings me to this communication point that you really need to communicate way more actively. And also, I said in the beginning, people tend to try to put all the efforts internally, but don't forget to think how your clients feel. So how are your clients impacted right now? Are there maybe even new opportunities, understanding the situation? I have one example of a company. It's a very regional thing, but it's a brilliant example. It's a big fruit and vegetable distribution company. It's more on the countryside, so you don't have Uber Eats or Delivery Hero type of things. And basically their business basically stopped because they are usually delivering hotels and restaurants. But they do have an app for ordering and to bring out their logistic services. And what they created in a week, in a bit more than a week, is basically a little mini Uber app, basically showing to customers which restaurants are open for takeaways or for delivery services. So they are using their existing platform more for the end customer services. They are promoting it on Facebook, on Instagram. It's super successful, and they build it in just a week. So these are just some very few examples where outside view of your clients basically might bring in some new aspects of your business in this current situation. Proactive communication, I talked about it, and I think we will tackle that point in the other parts as well.
Got it. And so, we'll move on to, I hope André is there.
Yes, I'm here now.
Okay, great. Apologies, André. I can move you to panelist, and then we can start with you. So yeah, I think we've moved on to your slide now. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And there's some points were already mentioned. So I want just to add here 3 things. One thing is on the customer focus side. It was already mentioned that some companies have the tendency to turn inward when something like this happens. And they forget the customers. And this is one of the key issues for our customers, for our clients, that we ask them, communicate with your customers, communicate. And also communication, of course, with the team. We made some webinars with our clients, and in the beginning, when the pandemic started, there was no really communication rules, how to handle that. And so this is another important aspect. Get in touch with your customers, get in touch with your employees, and giving. So this means we want that our customers are generous against their customers. We are sure and we guarantee that this will successful in the future for have a very fantastic customer relationship. On the business focus, it's all about money. So what we here see is, and we also have some clients that they found new way of cash flow. For example, by delivering at home stuff, letting orders come in online, by adding service quality and all these things. So concentrate on the cash side. And the third thing is, and this is very often forgotten, is to approach everything in a peaceful way. So it's been helpful, especially during this crisis. Yeah. And an example here with a big law company we introduced regularly mindfulness exercises to do during the day. And after 1 week, the team felt much more calm and transformed, and much more hope, and even performance raised almost on the same level as before the lockdown. So these are 3 important aspects for us, how we work with customers, and giving some examples.
Got it, André. So thanks for sharing your thoughts. So yeah, I think so that those were quite insightful. I would request Ayman to share his thoughts. Ayman, can you hear me?
Sorry, I was still on mute. All right.
Yeah.
So thank you, Mario. Okay, basically, I just want to capture what almost everybody agrees, that pandemic is just scary. What is even more terrifying is basically the economical or the possible economic recession or declines. And this time it is different than previous recessions. And the reason is that previous recessions, whether it's, you know, the Great Depression or the 2001, 2008, even the current oil decline, they are industry related. Now, this one is different. It's impacting almost every industry in every business. Some of them are severely impacted more than others, like aviation, like hospitality, probably oil and gas is having a double impact now, while some other businesses or industries may see an opportunity in this, not just by neutralizing their business, like Hans said, which is an excellent example. And I could see one of the similar businesses in the current region. They are called Virus. They are delivering now fresh vegetables and fruits to the homes, to end consumers using the platform. So there are opportunities still, but other businesses like which is not severely impacted by this, can see the opportunities like online services or businesses probably related to healthcare and pharma. Now, the real issue, in my view, is that some businesses or jobs have to do where they belong. So social distancing is not a privilege to them, like manufacturing. People have to go to plants and use the resources, the machinery, the plant, so that they produce whatever products they are producing. And these are difficult. And such type of businesses need to figure out how can we still go to work and do our jobs in a safe way or a safe manner or a healthy, agile regime. And that's the real challenge. The good news for other jobs or other types of jobs is that the change is impactful only at the beginning, because they just have to change their work regimes and the way they are doing their business. So it's not like business as usual. I've read this recent article in the Harvard Business Review, and it captured me that quote that business as usual is unusual by turning bedrooms into boardrooms and so forth. So lots of jobs now are doing work from home, just like we are doing now. So instead of having, you know, the office with the logo behind me, I'm having a mirror in the dining room and what have you structure. Everybody's going through that. But it's not just the looks, it's the way we are doing our jobs. And it can be quite challenging. I would be recalling from similar situations, not the current recession, but recently one of the clients, a large group in Yemen, northern Yemen, and they are called Hayal Said Anam, a group of 55 companies, 20,000 employees. They are having businesses or companies covering almost every industry. So they have an FMCG services, education, banking and financial institutes, hospitality. They have an academy and a university of their own. They are in manufacturing, heavy manufacturing like cement, commodities, wheat and other commodities. So they're really big. And in Yemen, they have been going through this internal difficulties for so many years. Now, with a change in that group, they have put a strategy. And one of the most important things that they said they would like to transform the business and survive the business or help it survive is by putting one of the 10 most important things in their transformation aspects is performance. So what they did is that they hired us. We went to Yemen actually for a week, and it was quite an experience, but we went to a safe zone in Aden, which is south of Yemen, and all of their 55 companies, GMs, deputy GMs, and their head office from Dubai, executives flew from their Dubai office and so forth. We met all there, and we designed their performance scheme and performance framework for the business as well as for the people. So it was really interesting to see how businesses can see performance framework for their staff as well as for their businesses can transform their business and help the business survive such decline. Other examples are from Egypt, as you're seeing, during the difficult times from 2011, the revolution time, and all the saga of the turbulences and unrest during the few years after 2011, basically because of political conflicts, and which led into a security lockdown of some sort. I was consulting for two different businesses. One of them was in manufacturing, and we would really hit really bad because we had a short on the supply chain. We had an issue bringing our employees or the labor and technicians and engineers to the factories so that we can keep producing. And we had an even problem or challenge getting the products through safely and securely to the end consumers, whether wholesalers, retailers, or 40% was export outside the country, which was another bigger challenge. So we did some fixes at the time by making, instead of 2 shifts, 3 shifts, and bringing in people to live in the proximity of the plant so we can have them work safely and commute safely and minimize those risks and logistics, but we were still impacted. The other experience was around the same time with another business that had a destination, one of the 3 largest destinations in Egypt, and they had 5 hotels in that, 5 hotel assets in that destination, along with a Gary Player golf course, a huge well-being spa, and lots of operations, kite surfing, one of the most exquisite kite surfing spots in the region, and so forth. And they were actually impacted hard because their businesses came to a halt, all of them, especially the hotels. And the hotels had a high operating cost just to maintain the assets, and all of the employees are there with a high cost and limitations from labor law, how to manage or optimize their cost and so forth. The 2 common factors in this is that both businesses realized at a certain point of time when they were really close to hitting bottom that they needed to develop a strategy, and a very rigorous strategy. And the strategy should address their operating model along with operating costs, as well as focus on the priorities and objectives and the performance regimes and engaging people and stakeholders. These 3 things were the most important for these 2 businesses. Thank you, Madam, and thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much, Ayman. I think I'm sure that really emphasized more on some of the areas that we are discussing, right? I mean, you really brought some, very good, points, relevant to the questions. Before we move on to the second question, right? I mean, I just want to check with the participants. I hope they are able to, hear us clearly, and. If you guys have any questions, right, we have an option to raise Q&A. You can, though we will take all the questions at the end, but in case if, while our speakers are sharing their thoughts, right, and any question that pops up in your mind, you can always type in Q&A and then we can pick it up later. All right. So, on this note, I'll just, and go ahead with the second and most important aspects, right? I mean, we, as Ayman and André and Hannes talked about, right? I mean, if you see here, while we are working from home, right? This is the big challenge, right? So many people operating from home, they have their own infra, right? And with the best infra available with them, right? They're trying to give their best, but that may have impact on the organization, right? So how shall, an organization look at this? How can they manage it, right? That's something, we really want to focus on. All right. So I'll just invite Hannes here, to share his thoughts.
Cool. Let's start with this. So before this whole Corona thing, around 5 to 6% of workforce worked actually from home. Now there is a big speculation about what's the percentage now. But whatever it is in the end, like we heard before, again, this is not relevant to everybody. So there are still many operations out there where only like 20% of their whole workforce is really working from home. The others need to visit the plants, work on machines with their hands and things like that. So let me give you some advice primarily on this remote notion. And again, here, like I said in the beginning, try to agree on results and expected outcomes. Don't try to start telling people what to do next and after it and after it and after it. If you do that, people just sit there and wait until they receive the next message from you, what to do next. Basically, we want people to use their brain power to think forward. And this is why you should start to agree on results, expected results within a certain period of time. People can only use their brain power if they have a full clarity on goals, on strategies, on updates. And especially in these times, this is why you need to get into a much more proactive way of communicating back to your people. They need to know, at least on a weekly basis, where are we, what has changed, which part of our long-term strategy still applies, we still stick to it, nothing has changed, and which are the parts where we definitely need to adjust and why, and how does it look like. If people are aware of this current situation and these current changes, they are able to adapt and basically give their best view and input towards it. Then about collaborative tools and documents. In these times where most of your team members are sitting at home, you want to set some kind of standard. So there's a lot of free tools out there, and what we don't want is that every person is picking another free tool and you have a wild mix of different tools. Try to set some standards, but also give some clear recommendations which tools are very useful to do this part, to do that part, and so on. The good thing with Profit is that basically they have really nice integrations with communication tools like Slack with Microsoft Teams, where you basically can connect feedback and conversations with your OKR parts, with your goals and targets, which is cool. I found out just about Miro.com 2 weeks ago, which is really cool. It's a kind of online whiteboard, which you are able to use during those kind of Zoom conversations. So you can pin Post-its, you can start brainstormings with your team members. Super nice tool. And definitely, collaborative documents like within Microsoft 365 or Google Docs, Google Sheets are really, really useful in these times. Also important, and we started this with actually all of our current clients, start to build your own remote etiquette in the sense that there is a certain cadence for updates for the whole company, for departments, for teams, based on one-on-ones. And these rhythms, this cadence should be shorter than normal, so it should be more frequent. start on time, end on time. This is really very useful to build that kind of discipline. Now, you're not wondering, I'm a German guy, I'll tell you that, to build a habit and a discipline around it, but it's really, really useful. And also these kind of Zoom meetings is not something where you just dial in and listen, consume. Basically, it's about preparation, and everybody needs to prepare up front. And you can only prepare if you know what this Zoom meeting will be about. So start to communicate what will you be discussing, and then people are able to prepare. Also work on a document to note down next steps and accountabilities. And what I would also recommend is not more than 90 minutes video conversation in one batch. And if you have a really long-term remote meeting or workshop during the whole day, I would recommend maximum 3 times 90 minutes. So you have breaks in between. You have at least 1 hour lunch break. Stick to it, because more than 90 minutes in a row on Zoom or on Hangouts or so, people just fade away. So that's typically, which is really useful, 3 times 90 minutes max.
Got it, Ernest. Yeah. So can I invite André and Erno?
Yeah. So the first topic is over communicate. So of course we educated our customers using OKR as the perfect tool these days, and to continue doing their OKR weekly and also their daily stand-up meeting, also using OKR sets here. But what we have figured out and recommended to our customers is also having such a kind of stand-up meeting via video conferencing during lunchtime. So we have found out that this more or less socializing during lunchtime is very important. And doing that in smaller groups, so in the department level or in startups, the whole company. And what we also have seen is that it's very helpful, and we recommended that to most of our customers, is sending out a daily, we called it State of the Union message from the CEO to the employees. So sending out that State of the Union message via email in text form, or even better as like a 2 minutes video message, or at least a voice message, giving them confidence and a personal touch and confidence that the world is still turning. And therefore, over communication is really very important. Shouldn't be, as Hannah said, very long video calls. It's more that it's regular, it's frequently, it's updating on a daily basis. The second sounds a little bit weird. It's be the captain. So the topic is the CEO and head of departments should show that they're the pilot in command. They have kind of everything under control in that difficult times. They should show that they are working, that they are acting accordingly, what needs to be done, and then, yeah, communicate what they're working on. Also giving them like a personal touch, socializing with a team and showing that these are really difficult times. And the third topic is kind of no cosmetics, I called it. So stick to the facts, no time for rants, for theories, for phrases like, I bet you're feeling that, or whatever. So it's presenting what's happening, not covering everything, balance any negative messages with positive, and first then communicate the negative ones, and then the positive, that the positive ones are still in their mind when you close any meetings or discussions or whatsoever. So this is, we have given that to that advice is to most of our customers with a very positive feedback.
Got it. Got it. I think this is a very good point. I mean, definitely, everyone, there are a lot of leaders already there in the room, and I'm sure they must be having their views. But I really liked, the one point which you raised, which is about, during lunch hour having the conversation with the team, right? Yeah, we feel like we are very much part of it, right? And we are not working in silos. Yeah, I'm sure that will bring a lot of socialization. I mean, while we are, it's one of the point to have social distancing, but that will this one of the act can eliminate that.
Yeah, I think physical distancing is what people mean more than social distancing. We can still socialize, but be physically distant and still be able to socialize.
Yeah. Actually, we established that kind of socializing also during lunchtime before the crisis in brown bag meetings where you sit together, having lunch together with your brown bag, having someone, also holding a speech about a special topic. But that's now more important, and it's not about holding a speech or something like that. It's more like, more on a private basis, exchange minds. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably, and other aspect that I could think of is that will lead to a motivation. You feel like you are quite connected. Yeah, definitely. I think this is though a very small point to note, but I think that will bring a lot of big change that we can think of. Can I, and on this note, I would like to invite, Rajiv to share his views.
Yeah, thanks, Madhu. So I don't know if you all know the situation in Singapore. In Singapore, we've been working from home for a while now, I think for a few weeks. And the option of going to work for other than non-essential services, and it's a very narrow industry, right? It doesn't exist. So either you can work from home or you don't work from home, or you don't work at all, right? So most of the companies I know have been working from home for a while. And we've been able to establish a lot of protocols over the last few weeks. And in fact, now the discussion is that since we've really discovered working from home, this might be part of our culture going forward, right? So I think somebody mentioned in the panel that prior to this COVID situation, only 5% used to work from home. We don't know how many of us are working from home now, but I think more than 5% of us will be working from home after COVID, right? So that's going to get embraced. A topic which is going to be discussed later is also about how our priorities are changing. They have changed during this crisis, and don't be afraid to change your OKRs. Don't be afraid to engage your employees to discuss and redefine your OKRs for this period, and communicate the why and define that. Now, because we now work from home, micromanagement, supervising, those kind of management styles are becoming more difficult, right? And it was never effective, but now as an OKR evangelist, I find it as a, I won't say a blessing, but it helps because now people are more focused on really focusing on the outcomes, because you don't have the ability to micromanage, you don't have the ability to supervise. And it's just about getting more focused on results rather than trying to, every hour trying to monitor what people have done, right? There have been benefits of face-to-face interaction. I mean, they are. Leadership is a contact sport. Management is a contact sport. We miss the benefits of face-to-face interactions, like motivating people, resolving conflicts, brainstorming discussions which happen. But what we tell people, and we've seen this quite effective, is that having something called an open radio policy, right? Where anybody can call anybody at any time to discuss, to clarify. All missed calls are responded to in a matter of 1 hour. Having basic rules like that, so that the interaction, the concept of over communication is adhered to, right? And what I find is, everybody is going through a change in circumstance, and management and leaders should recognize that, working from home is a change in circumstance for every employee, right? And we discuss challenges in this part of the world. Sometimes, the Wi-Fi, the bandwidth does not work correctly. Now, in the past, one person in the family might work from home sometimes. Now everybody is working from home, so there are children around. So these are kind of circumstances which everybody is facing. Everybody should be sensitive to this. The idea is to stay positive. The idea is also to communicate that we are not, especially for fintechs and SMEs, we are preparing for the post-lockdown phase, right? So that's how we view working from home. There are so many other things to talk about, but it's open for conversation.
Got it, Rajiv. I think you rightly said. So one of the point probably, before we move on to the some of the important aspects, right? I think by now, right, a lot of us, right, already in a phase of lockdown, right. Previously, if you ask anyone working from home, it's like 5% is still a big number, but even if 2% are working, it's like whether they'll be able to manage work or not. And now the whole world is under lockdown and working from home, and we are still able to execute. In fact, in few cases we have seen and we have heard from the customers, their productivity has actually increased. Probably either they are like able to stretch, or they are able to coordinate better. Probably they are able to save their time in traveling. The other aspects that we are a lot of hearing is like this may shift the way organizations may operate in future. This is definitely could be one of the aspects where an organization can save their cost in infra, right? And if probably they can invest more in terms of giving them the ability to execute things remotely, right? I don't mean people working from home, but wherever they are, right? So this could definitely bring in the change. So on this note, right, I mean, while people are working from remote, if you look at the questions, right, I mean, which is more about how the communication or collaboration is important for any organizations. And definitely, I mean, while you're on office, right, you can talk to your your peers, you can talk to your colleagues, you can just walk down to their desk, right, and you can if they are, let's say for some reason it's quite high priority, not responding to their emails, your emails, they're working from home. Right, you can always walk on, right? But in this scenario, when so many people are working from remote, this is one of the challenge, right? And then in that case, bringing high visibility, right, or bringing high transparency, when everyone knows who is doing what, where one stands, is it something which is very much required, as part of this scenario or situations, and how leaders should be looking at this, how should they be prioritizing their goals, how shall they be prioritizing their strategies of business, right? So these are some of the aspects, right? A lot of leaders, a lot of probably at different levels, they are trying to see how they can manage it. And on this note, again, I would like to invite Hannes.
Okay, I was muted. Yeah, again, giving some hints and recommendations, and especially in this situation, I think it's way easier. Although in these times nothing is easy, but it is a bit easier for companies who really have invested a lot in providing a lot of clarity in the sense of where do we see ourselves in 5 or 10 years from now? What is our purpose we would like to deliver? So what is our vision and mission? What is our short-term strategy? If we boil it down to, let's say, the time frame of the end of 2020, for example. So companies who have invested, who have done a very good job in specifying that in a very good way, are in a better position now, because it's easy for them to basically readjust which part of this visionary and strategic statement is still valid. So despite all situations, difficulties out there, we stick to it, and which parts do we need to adjust, or we see it more flexible right now, because that immediately delivers a lot of transparency and good level of understanding to employees. And again, this is the basis to use the brain power of your employees. If they know where are we heading to, what is our direction, where do we stand right now, then people strive for alignment by nature. I'm fully convinced on that part. So you don't need to micromanage if people support and understand the direction. And maybe one exercise would be to really think about just the top 3 things to achieve until December 31st. And I don't talk about achieving budget. So it's apart from achieving budget. You do that exercise by company and by the big departments at least. And you think about the top 3 things to achieve until June 31st. And again, here, it's not about achieving budget. It's about what makes us better as an organization, as a team, as a department, and what is still very valid despite all the things happening around us. And I think if you are able as a leader to communicate the answers to these 2 lines in a very concrete way, then people start to understand how they are able to contribute towards it. And B, it also gives a good portion of security because people understand where we are.
Yeah, I think this makes a lot of sense, right? You bring in a lot of aspects, right? I mean, specifically, one of the important part of the slide is like you highlighting, what should be the priority, right, for June 31st for the current quarter, and how you basically want to then, realign your business priority until the end of the year, right? I mean,
yeah, it's still about maintaining focus. Despite all challenges, it's still about maintaining focus. And we heard before, and it's true, you should be open to change OKRs on the fly because things are changing, right? But I would rather see that happening on team or individual level. I would not like to see it so much on department or company level, because to keep some steadiness here, I think is very important in these times. Things on team and individual level are changing constantly. People fail, we give it a try. There is no way forward, so we stop things and start new things. That's okay to be more flexible here, but I would rather more see it on individual level. By the way, individual level, personally, I'm not a big friend of individual OKRs. I don't like them, but during these times where a lot of people work remotely, maybe you should give it a try, at least not for all, but for some of your team members, also to ask them to work on individual OKRs until end of June.
Yeah.
Would be a good idea to give it a try.
Yeah, makes sense. In fact, while we are discussing, and that probably help our, other the speakers, we are actually running the live polls, right? And one of the concerns of many people who are here in the attending the webinar, right? Survival of business, right? So there are 2 aspects that people really like to hear and understand, which is like realignment of business and survival of the business. These are the 2 aspects. Right? I mean, this is the one of the reason, right? We could see people attending webinar and they really feel like addressing it. I think your slide is quite specific to these 2 points in terms of probably the thought that you've shared. I'm sure it must have given some sort of understanding on how they can focus on these 2 areas.
And even if you are listening now and you are not doing OKRs, you can still answer those 2 lines without OKRs. So if you run OKRs, basically the answer is in the format of OKRs. But if your top 3 things is basically 3 sentences, it's 3 sentences. So
yeah,
even without OKRs, I think it's useful to think about these answers.
got it. Yeah. That's right, Hannes. Yeah. So yeah, that's the next slide that you wanted to emphasize. So before Hannes, you move on, I think I'm sure we have a mix of audience, right? Some of them, probably.
This is nothing to explain. Maybe you can share it to the audience. This is basically just a blueprint to run remote OKR definition workshops. It's too tiny to go through it now, so you can share it with the audience.
Yeah. The point that I'm trying to make here is, we are continuously using the word OKR. I'm sure some of them have heard of OKR. I'm sure the full form of OKR is objective and key results. Just to clarify, OKR is not like any typical KRA or performance management, right? It's more about, it focuses more on achieving organizational goal. It focuses more on outcome, right? While we are running a poll, right, it talks about realignment of business. So how realignment of business or managing workforce remotely, right? So OKR emphasize on that. There are some of the leading organizations like Google, to Intel, to Apple, to Microsoft. There are many, right? I mean, we can list many, and these companies, these organizations are implementing the OKR concepts for more than a decade. Some of them are like a couple of decades, right? And they have grown, right? And if we really go back and see how did this survive during these tough times, because of bringing high transparency, alignment, right? Realigning of the business, right? They have also realigned their business. They have survived during tough times, right? So that's what, probably, we are planning to, run series of webinars wherein we can emphasize more on OKRs. So moving on to the, the next and important aspects, right? I mean, definitely it is having direct impact, right? I mean, people working for remote, the second thoughts that comes to any leader's mind is like, what happens to the quality, right? What happens to the productivity? Because there's a lack of, probably support you can expect from, the team members immediately, right? I mean, you have dependency on emails, phones, talking to them, sometimes having internet, right? So these are some of the aspects that, people are really, really worried about. And, the other thing that is like, if that is the case, right? I mean, we are thinking about survival of business. We are thinking about, shift in, realigning of business. We are thinking about executions of strategy, right? So what should be a shift in strategy, and how we should be prioritizing it, right? So that's something, we definitely want to take it up as part of the webinar. And again, as part of this, I'd like to, invite, André here. And I don't know.
Yes. First, the most important aspect is that our customers have to make faster decisions and execute faster. So it's important to collect data. And what we suggest is that our customers go from smart goals to fast goals. And we have an example of a customer. It's in the cosmetics area. And with these 4 aspects, they could raise their sales turnover in March. It's a normal shop, but they have to now to change business, doing online things and like this. And let's go through the 4 aspects. First, frequently, you need the right data to make the next steps. And you have to talk to your team, you have to talk to your customers, to suppliers, to potential partners, to market, and so on. And we already talked about how important meeting is, and you make shorter decisions, more frequent, daily, twice a day, daily huddles, and all these things. The second thing is ambitious, and here you have to re-strategize and establish an ambitious mindset. And here are 2 questions important. What are the new opportunities you can seize, and how can you transform and adapt to take advantage of new opportunities? So that's what we were discussing with this customer in the team. And the third thing is to be specific what you want to achieve, and clarity. So it comes again to OKR. We established an OKR set especially to go on this online business. And we also used SWOT analysis, for example. So we used some strategic tools to immediately find out and make decisions and execute what is possible. And the fourth thing is to be transparent, sharing all this information to all in the company. And maybe the last point I want to mention here is that the main thing is to keep the main thing, and the main thing, don't jump. So it's also follow your core purpose and don't switch too much, as already mentioned. I think Hannes, was it? Don't change the strategy. Don't change the core purpose. Maybe for the next 3 months, you have something to do especially, and don't jump from one opportunity to the other one. So keep on track. So these are our things we suggest our customers.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, André. All right. So
just one. Yeah, just Madhu, just one second. Those people who have questions, please send it to the Q&A panel. We've received your questions. The panelists will answer your question during the Q&A session. So please keep sending your questions right now.
Yeah, that's right. So so moving on to the next slide, right? Wherein I feel that Rajiv also shares more or less the same thoughts that André talked about. So Rajiv,
yeah, I mean, it's great to know that I share a lot of thoughts with Hans and André, right? So yeah, it's great to know that. Look, you see, the situation has changed right now. So at least in the short term, right? Nobody really knows the long-term impact. And I agree with both Hans and André. The long-term vision and the focus of most companies should not be changing. But I think when you have a government directive to shut down your business for the next 2 months, right, the short-term focus changes. So the short-term corporate priorities change, and the questions around how do we sustain, how do we survive these 2 months, especially in very high cash flow businesses, right? The priorities change in the short term. So a lot of businesses we speak to, especially the services sector, right? Cash flow is becoming a focus, right? So there is now a focus to see how you can get engaged cash flows, get support from the government, because governments are providing stimuluses to support businesses during this time. I urge all SMEs and fintechs to look at these opportunities out there to sustain yourselves. Renegotiate fixed cost contracts, especially rental contracts. Salaries are a major topic, and it is a sensitive topic. So it's something which has to be done with an inclusive mindset rather than just a cost-cutting mindset. Taxes, these have been the focus for most businesses in this part of the world over the last few weeks, right? The idea is not just to cut costs. The idea is to, keep the supply chain alive. If the supply chain dies because of a short-term focus, getting the business back on track after the lockdown will become even more difficult, and it will have a long-term impact on your business. So have a broader perspective rather than just a narrow mindset about the company. Look at your partners, your clients, your suppliers, your employees, and really look at the entire value chain rather than just have an inclusive mindset, just a narrow-minded focus, right? Securing finance is becoming a major topic, right? Going back to your banks, right? Nobody has been able to solve that problem yet. The discussion is the negotiations or the discussions right now are in the early days. On one hand, banks are trying to manage their risk. On the other hand, they are also faced with a conflicting priority that if they manage the business with their old policies in mind, it might have a longer impact on the bank because their clients might go bankrupt, right? So these are the kind of questions which all parties in the economy are asking themselves, right? There's still some clients buying. And I'm not talking about essential services, right? It's not just about food or you know, we're talking about people buying entertainment, technology, education, more trade, you know. So most businesses, to stay sustainable, have to have a very nimble mindset to be able to pivot to engaging your customers. May not be in the way we've been doing in the last many years, but being nimble, being focused, and try and capture whatever you can capture at this stage, right? Online digital strategy, social media, you know, some have just resorted to making phone calls and, you know, just calling up their clients many times, engaging them. Clients have focus. You see, in the digital automation space, now clients have realized that they can't survive with the manual process, especially when the people are not allowed to come to office, right? So there is an opportunity for digitalization, and all parties engaged in that aspect of the business, right? There's another talk. I mean, there are 4 points which I've put there. It's not a one size fits all. It's just key topics which we are discussing nowadays and which we are focusing on. It may or may not be relevant to any of the participants depending upon the individual circumstances, right? I'll just move to the next one, which is employees, right? Most of our clients talk about maintaining human capital as a priority, right? Yes, it is, you know, there is a loyalty standpoint saying our employees which make the company, but there is also another focus as to how can we get our employees to be productive and efficient and support the short term effectively from a work from home situation, right? We are seeing a lot of companies focusing on providing support for this work from home scenarios, doctors on call, psychologists, counseling. So if you're a counselor right now, you might see an uptick in business because they are engaging. I know of a executive coach, a bank which has hired an executive coach to coach their management team for the next 9 months. You know, they see that, you know, even the leadership is going through a stressful time because they are having to make, first they are people, so they're personally going through a change. Second, they have to take strong decisions, right? So there's a fair amount of stress in the entire employee community at this point in time, right? There's also a focus on suppliers and vendors. I talked about maintaining the entire value chain, right? Your suppliers, your vendors, and your clients are also going through the same challenges which you're going through. They're also having similar issues, right? One is probably challenging traditional BCP concepts to having a very broader perspective, right? Where plan A, B, and C don't work, you really have to have a plan for D, a plan D too, right? So that is something which is there on the table now. But it's also looking at alternatives to vendors. It's also including your suppliers, your vendors, and your clients in these challenging times and coming up with joint solutions. Because if everybody survives this short term, I don't know how short the short term is, but if everybody survives, we stand a better chance to have a long-term result, right? So I think that's where we are. Real estate companies in Singapore are actually reaching out to their clients and renegotiating real estate contracts, right? They are coming up with many different ways of structuring a rental and contract for the short term at least, right? With their clients. It's a concept that you've got to understand that it's not just about you as a company. It's also about you part of a larger community. So if the entire community survives, the entire value chain survives, you also stand a chance of surviving. So it's about having that mindset, right? It's an opportunity to engage your clients, right? A lot of people are rolling out digital marketing strategies. They're focusing on that. There are things which can be done, just because we are working from home and we can't meet our customers over lunch doesn't mean we can't engage our clients, right? So there are ways to engage customers. There are ways to get feedback. There are ways to focus on customers, which we probably didn't do in the past. So that's something which we could do it. I've seen companies now rolling out loyalty programs. You know, some companies have actually pledged that all purchases from their online platforms would go 15 or 20% would go for donation towards those COVID relief funds. There are ways to engage clients, try and focus and keep that alive, and don't forget to over communicate. I keep telling people, don't feel shy to send that other boring email on what you're doing to manage this COVID situation, because everybody gets, I think, about numerous emails on how people are managing this COVID situation. Don't feel shy to be the next one, because the more you communicate with everybody, your customers, your partners, your employees, that's how much you still manage to keep them engaged. So these are just some pointers. I know there are many more priorities depending upon your situation. Yeah.
Yeah, got it, Rajiv. Yeah, I think there's some of the good points that you've raised here, right? One, probably for me, one takeaway from your thoughts is like, you know, you rightly said, right? Not only we being as a, you know, service provider, someone who is like buying our services are also in the same situation, right? They also have a customer. It's like a chain that we can, you know, form. They are also in a situation wherein they also have to serve customers. They are also a customer of other, you know, vendors, right? So the situation is same, just that, you know, how do we look at things, and how do we handle the current situation in terms of engaging the customers, to managing the, you know, the suppliers, to engaging the employees, right? So it's a complete chain that we are discussing here. And on the same note, I would you know, request you know, Ayman to share his thoughts. He has really put in a lot of thoughts here, which will benefit a lot of you know, participants.
Thank you, Winston. All right. Yeah. Okay. The real challenge for getting results, especially from people working at home or remotely, is basically having to change our way of working. So working in a home habitat is totally different than a premise or a business or a plant or what have you. Leading remotely is another challenge, and adapting methods of communication and interaction is an extreme challenge, because most people, I think more than 90% of us, can perform based on the usual and constant interaction and communication, the formal as well as the informal. So receiving support and getting the support as well as the feedback on the spot in the office place is really important for everybody to perform appropriately. It's a component, it's part of the ingredient, and that's the part of the big challenge. So I do agree with Rajiv as well as Hans and André and Erno that there's no one single recipe, there's no one size fits all. However, I would like to share with you a best practice for a current client. This client is based in Egypt. It's actually a company that's managing the payment systems, the national payment systems in Egypt. And it is working directly with the 38 banks in the country, of course, the Central Bank of Egypt and so forth. So 3 weeks ago, or more than 3 weeks ago, they have decided in March, sometime around the 20th of March or so, that they would work from home. So they shut down their premise and they start working from home. And now they are entering their 4th week. And the first week was a bit chaotic, but by the 3rd week, they have figured it out. And to the extent that they are capturing, one, they are engaging people, and the way they are engaging, of course, not everybody is working online. Support jobs and so forth don't have a job online, so they are having the privilege of just staying at home. But the the main work teams in that business to run the business are working all remotely, and they are capturing not only engagement or engaging employees and engaging their leaders, they are taking note of indicatives. How many minutes do they spend online together, and how many online sessions or meetings do they have with stakeholders, whether the shareholders or primarily their customers, or with each other, or service providers, and what have you. And they have issued their first electronic newsletter within this context. So the first thing they did is that we are going to treat people in a safe manner. So it is important that every employee is safe, and we are working from home. Their CEO addressed the nation by saying that and doing that. Not only he, but the top executives did the same thing, and they're setting the role model by working from home, just like André, I think, said. They adapted fast. It took them only 1 week, maximum 10 days, to adapt to this new regime and the way they are working remotely from home. And part of the reasons that they had previous drills during not only recessions, but basically as part of their business assurance and business continuity plans. So they had certain drills to some of their key business processes and platforms, whether they do it from premise or log in from home and address to projected issues or problems or crises and so forth. They started working in work teams. So cross-functional work teams getting together and resolving issues, addressing business needs, and they have their own team goals. What is really distinct about this company is that when we started the project mid of 2019, they were almost finished with their 5 years business strategy by McKinsey. And we went in, the team and I, to work back to McKinsey to take that strategy and help the organization cascade that strategy and implement the human capital parameters, starting from the organization restructuring, the performance framework, etc. At that time, we defined the performance framework, and we put one of the alternatives for this company to adopt OKR system as a tool, not only to manage performance or appraisal or what have you, but mainly a tool to manage business. And there were some skepticism or reluctance at the beginning. The top executives went to Harvard for 2 weeks, and as part of self-development and what have you, they came after that, and they're talking rigorously about OKR. So we started implementing the OKR. Midway implementing the OKR, last week they invited me to their executive online meeting, because the one topic they wanted to give a lot of focus to is that we need to continue implementing our performance management system, including the OKR and KPIs. And the reason is that they found it fundamental and crucial to their current status. It is a success story in my view, which is working really well. So I do agree with Hans and Rajiv. There is no one recipe. I agree also with André regarding moving from smart to fast, and this is exactly what this company is trying to do. They actually beating the clock with one of key products. It's called IPN, Instant Payment Network, and it is usually designed and implemented in several months, and they are addressing it in few weeks. Of course, it's taking them a lot of resources and energy and devotion, and from the feedback, they are doing it. So there's no one single recipe in resolving the issue for the lockdown and the consequent economic recessions or difficulties for businesses as cause of the COVID-19. It will pass, as all the recessions have passed. The economic decline and recession is likely to take longer time to pass and to survive for most businesses. So it is really important that the focus should be on helping the business pass through, take the business through this difficulty, whatever type of business it is. And we need to adapt fast different ways and methods of working from home, working remotely, leading the business remotely, engaging employees, but also engaging customers, like Rajiv said, and to revisit our priorities. I like what Hans shared by setting in what is the top 3 achievements that the business needs to deliver by 31st of December and create a milestone midway by end of June. What are the top 3 achievements? Putting in milestones which represent the priorities, probably sometimes redefining or revisiting the priorities and the objectives, like Rajiv said, is really key and important. Just to conclude, I was actually influenced. I admired a small article written in New York Times by Peter Goodman, and it relates to how should we address our business in this difficult time. And the bottom end of that article is that it is recommending, he's recommending to, after talking and getting input from lots of analysts, economical, business, and political, and what have you, as well as healthcare, is that every business should create 2 strategies. It's the 21-month strategy. The article appeared end of March, so it was like about 21 months till the end of 21. And he said the one strategy is that best case scenario of this whole saga of COVID-19 and its consequences disappears, not just by charm, magic, or imagination, but it is actually resolved in a few weeks to a few months. So what is the best case scenario? Business as normal. How can we overcome and resume business and go on achieving our objectives? And the worst case scenario, if we are impacted throughout this period, 21 months for 2020 and 2021, what are our priorities and how can we keep our business surviving through that, those priorities? Thank you, Madhu.
Got it, Emam. Yeah. I think anything on this note, keeping in mind the time constraint, we have few participants raised Q&A, right? So we would like to move on to question and answer. So Karthik, you want to take over?
Yeah. So Ayman, since we're already at you, the first question was asked by Tom, and I think you have received that question. Would you like to answer that? You've already kind of put a text out there.
Can you remind me, Karthik, what was the question?
So the question was, today most people work in isolation, not only because of COVID-19, however, teams work in the same locations using tools and methods of remote work. Of course, there are companies that had to change the way they work. For them, this is a problem because they do not have a remote work system. They use tools, but they do not have specific rules for using these tools. Having remote work tools is not the same as having a remote work system. Do you have any suggestion for a remote work system, not just remote work tools?
Okay, I'm sure between the panelists as well as the participants, there are lots of experiences, and some of them are effective, good, some of them might need some refining. Well, actually, I like what I think André said, that it's not about supervision and one way or top-down type of structures. It's more about engagement of people and trusting what people know about their priorities and what do they need to deliver. So we just need to put the right frame and context for them, as well as build the professional rope in terms of, let's set our priorities. What are set our priorities and what are the results that we need to reach to, focus on those results and develop the ways and the methods. How can we be sure that we are going to reach those results? And I believe that all the panelists have said the same one way or the other. I hope I've answered the question.
Sure.
besides to the slide I've just put, and if you put in all the slides together, the one from Rajiv, Hans, André's, Erno, and finally mine, I think that there is no recipe, but there is a good guide for how to address the business in these difficult times and manage it remotely.
Yeah, I think you guys have given all the ingredients. It's now up to them to cook the recipe and make something out of it. All of you have given different ingredients that you can use. The second question is from Swati. She says, she asks, what are the challenges faced at an employee organization level while adapting an OKR strategy? How do OKRs work for verticals which have hit a standstill due to the pandemic, like aviation, hospitality, and tourism? How can OKR help in the revival of post this global crisis? And she's got a continuation to the question, and how can OKRs also help over companies that are overwhelmed, like telecom, Wi-Fi players, and healthcare, to operate efficiently? So I think the two sets to this entire question: how can challenges faced by an employee, an organization, in adapting OKR? How verticals which have been hit to a standstill will overcome this using OKRs due to the pandemic? And lastly, how organizations that are overwhelmed with service providers, how can they use OKRs to operate efficiently? So I open it to the panelists. Any one of you can pick and choose how you'd like to answer the question or parts of that question.
Well, if I may start.
Yeah, please.
So first, let's pick a very hard hit industry like aviation or things like that, or imagine we are in a hotel group, for example, where basically when this whole thing started, you might have already done your Q2 OKRs or not. So if you have done them and basically now this new situation popped up, then for sure that would be a situation where you would need to change your entire Q2 OKR setup, because the framework conditions are being changed completely. When basically you are about to start to define and to align your Q2 OKRs, and you're heading into this new situation, then basically this is helping you a lot, because again, if teams and employees understand the current situation, understand which part of our long-term strategy is still valid and which parts are still probably on hold because of this new situation, then teams and individuals are about to align by nature. So if they know where we're heading to, they will build OKRs which most likely contribute already a lot towards it. And this is basically the first step to agree on some expected results for the end of June. And then you have a goal, you have an expectation set and a description of that expectation, and then you can start to work towards it without giving your teams and employees a step-by-step task list on what to do first, what to do next, and so on. And this is very helpful.
Thank you, Enes. Just to add to the question, what about service providers in verticals which are currently overwhelmed, like telecom, Wi-Fi players, and healthcare? How should they reset their or realign their OKRs to operate efficiently? Anybody would like to take a dig at that?
Most likely, this increase of their normal business is basically BAU related. So it's basically their business as usual. Meaning their set of OKRs ideally is built around improvement and what basically brings them forward, but it's not necessarily covering all their business as usual. So now in this situation, the amount of business as usual is exploding. Probably their capacity for improvement is relatively low. So again, if you have set your OKRs already and this situation pops up, I would suggest to pause or to stop a majority of your Q2 OKRs, because you need to have the full capacity on just delivering business as usual. So that would be my recommendation in that sense.
Right. So that would mean moving resources, moving people, and just focusing on the current need of the hour, where you have a lot of resources that are required to keep business as usual.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so we have one last question. This is from Mitali. We are not aware of such abnormal crises that are going to happen. So what would be the best time for top level management guys to change their OKR strategies? Let me repeat that question. We are not aware of such abnormal crisis that is going to happen. So what would be the best time for top level management guys to change their OKR strategy? So if you've already set and planned out for the year, at which point do you now relook at that and change those strategies is kind of her question.
Right. So if it's just a focus on, if the question is focused on not aware about a crisis like this, then the answer would be as soon as possible, right? So the faster people readjust to a changing situation, the faster they are in a position to be able to respond and manage that better, right? So there is no point. The conundrum in this particular case was that it took a while for people to assess the impact of such a situation, right? None of us, or many people, could not estimate the impact of COVID, right? And we still probably don't understand it. It's just that now we've taken a worst case scenario, right? So the answer is as soon as possible. There is nobody really knows the exact timeline.
Right, thanks, Rajiv. And Ayman, you would like to add something to that?
Yes. Well, okay. OKRs are means rather than an objective or end result in themselves. So they are means, they are a vehicle, they are a method of achieving what we need to achieve. There are different methods, there are different tools, but it is just a method. And OKRs are quite flexible as well as dynamic in terms of you can revise them, re-steer them, redirect them based on the business need. So the transformation or the massive change in a business could be elective because we changed our strategies. There's a different set of product portfolio requirement or need in the market, or the customer has changed, or the setup of the business model has changed, or whatever. So that's almost an elective one, or it could be forced upon the business, just like the context we're in, the situation we're in now. So the more the dynamic business management tools are, the more odds or opportunities the business would have in terms of reaching where it needs to reach. So in other words, sorry for a long answer, but to brief it, OKR is a tool, dynamic, and whatever tool which is dynamic can change or needs to change with an objective of achieving the priorities for the business. Mitali, the right time for changing the OKR strategies by leadership could be different, in my view, from one business to the other, based on the context and the challenge.
Just to add something here from my side, I think it depends really on the business you are in. And maybe you don't have to change your strategic top-level OKRs, but maybe your tactical. But at the end, it really depends on the business you are in, the dynamic, what really happens now in the next moments.
Thanks, André. Well said. Yes, strategies should be there, should be consistent. And what I was referring to is the OKR strategies themselves. Are we changing them? Are we changing the way we are managing our OKRs? The strategies related to OKRs themselves.
All right, thank you everyone for your questions and the panelists for answering them.